Maya Rodriguez had always been the smallest person in any room she entered. At 5 feet 2 inches and barely weighing 120 pounds, she often felt invisible among her peers. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood in Detroit, she learned early that size didn't always determine strength, but convincing others of that fact proved to be a constant battle. The morning sun cast long shadows across the concrete courtyard of the Detroit Fire Academy as Maya adjusted her gear for what felt like the 100th time. Her hands trembled slightly as she checked her helmet strap, not from fear, but from the adrenaline that had been coursing through her veins since she'd received the acceptance letter 3 months ago. Today marked the beginning of her firefighter training, a dream she'd harbored since childhood when she watched her neighborhood burn and saw the brave men and women who ran toward danger while everyone else ran away. The other recruits gathered in small clusters, their voices creating a low hum of nervous energy. Maya noticed immediately that she was one of only 4 women in a class of 32, and by far the smallest person present. The men around her looked like they'd stepped out of a fitness magazine, with broad shoulders and muscular frames that seemed designed for the physical demands ahead. Even the other women appeared more physically imposing than Maya, standing several inches taller with athletic builds that commanded respect. Captain James Morrison emerged from the main building, his weathered face bearing the scars of 25 years battling fires throughout the city. His reputation preceded him as one of the toughest instructors in the Academy's history, known for his no-nonsense approach and unwavering standards. Stories circulated among the recruits about his legendary training methods and how he'd broken more than a few hopefuls who thought they had what it took to be firefighters. "Listen up, recruits!" Morrison's voice boomed across the courtyard, instantly silencing all conversation. "You're here because someone believed you might have what it takes to save lives and protect this city. I'm here to find out if that someone was right or dead wrong. Over the next 16 weeks, you'll be tested in ways you never imagined. Some of you will rise to the challenge, and some of you will wash out. That's not a threat, it's a promise." His eyes swept across the group, lingering momentarily on each recruit. When his gaze fell upon Maya, she felt a chill run down her spine. There was something in his expression that suggested he'd already made up his mind about her chances of success. "Firefighting isn't about being a hero," Morrison continued. "It's about being part of a team that functions like a well-oiled machine. Every person must be able to carry their weight and then some. When your partner's life depends on your ability to drag them out of a burning building, there's no room for weakness or excuses." The first week of training focused on basic physical conditioning and classroom instruction about fire behavior, building construction, and emergency medical procedures. Maya threw herself into the academic portion with fierce determination, staying up late into the night studying while her fellow recruits socialized or rested. She quickly established herself as one of the top performers in written exams and demonstrated an intuitive understanding of fire science that impressed her instructors. However, the physical challenges proved more daunting. During the initial fitness assessment, Maya struggled with some of the strength-based exercises. While she excelled at endurance running and could maintain pace with the fastest recruits, tasks requiring raw power exposed her physical limitations. The rope climb left her arms burning with exhaustion, and she barely managed to complete the required number of push-ups within the time limit. It was during the ladder raise exercise that she first encountered serious doubt from her peers. The drill required recruits to work in teams of 4 to raise a 35-foot extension ladder, a fundamental skill that firefighters used countless times in their careers. Maya found herself partnered with 3 larger male recruits: Derek Thompson, a former college football player, Marcus Williams, an ex-military veteran, and Ryan O'Connor, whose father and grandfather had both served as firefighters. As they approached the ladder, Derek glanced at Maya with obvious skepticism. "Maybe you should take the back position," he suggested, referring to the supposedly easier spot at the rear of the ladder. "We need someone strong at the front to guide it up." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. "I can handle the front position." Derek exchanged looks with the other 2 men, a silent communication that Maya intercepted easily. They thought she was dead weight, a liability that would hold them back. She'd seen that look countless times before in various situations throughout her life, and it never failed to ignite a fire within her. The ladder raise went poorly. Despite Maya's best efforts, the team struggled to coordinate their movements, and the ladder wobbled dangerously as they attempted to extend it to full height. Captain Morrison watched from a distance, making notes on his clipboard with the expression of someone who'd seen this exact scenario play out many times before. "Rodriguez," Morrison called out after the exercise concluded. "Stay behind. The rest of you, hit the showers." Maya's heart sank as the other recruits filed away, some shooting sympathetic glances in her direction while others seemed relieved that attention had been diverted from their own performance issues. She approached Morrison with her head held high, determined not to show any sign of defeat. "Sir, I know that didn't go well, but—" Morrison raised a hand to cut her off. "Rodriguez, I've been doing this for longer than you've been alive. I've seen every type of recruit walk through these doors. The cocky ones who think they're God's gift to firefighting, the scared ones who question every decision, and the determined ones who'll work themselves into the ground before they'll admit defeat." He paused, studying her face carefully. "The question is, which type are you? Because what I saw out there today was someone trying to prove something instead of someone focused on getting the job done. That kind of attitude gets people killed." The words hit Maya like a physical blow, but she refused to let them break her spirit. "With respect, Captain, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was trying to do my job." Morrison's expression softened slightly, though his tone remained stern. "Your job is to be part of a team that saves lives. If you can't handle the physical demands, then no amount of determination will make up for that shortcoming. I've seen too many small-statured recruits wash out because they couldn't adapt their approach to work with their physical limitations." That evening, Maya sat alone in her small apartment, replaying the day's events in her mind. She'd moved to Detroit specifically to attend the fire academy, leaving behind family and friends in her hometown of Grand Rapids. The decision had cost her financially and emotionally, but she'd been convinced it was worth the sacrifice to pursue her dream. Now, barely a week into training, she found herself questioning whether she'd made a terrible mistake. The physical challenges weren't going to get easier, and she could already sense that some of her fellow recruits viewed her as a liability. Worse yet, Captain Morrison seemed to have written her off as another small recruit destined for failure. But as she sat there contemplating her options, Maya remembered why she'd chosen this path in the first place. Growing up, she'd witnessed too many emergencies where help arrived too late, or where the first responders lacked the compassion and understanding needed to truly serve their community. She'd seen how firefighters could be heroes not just through their physical capabilities, but through their intelligence, dedication, and unwavering commitment to protecting others. The next morning brought a new set of challenges, including their first introduction to the breathing apparatus that would become essential equipment throughout their training and careers. The self-contained breathing apparatus, or SCBA, added nearly 30 pounds to each recruit's body weight and made even simple tasks more difficult. Maya strapped on the equipment and immediately felt the additional burden on her small frame. The air tank seemed disproportionately large against her back, and the face mask restricted her peripheral vision. As the recruits lined up for a basic agility course while wearing full gear, she caught Derek Thompson smirking in her direction. "Think you can keep up today, Rodriguez?" Derek called out loud enough for others to hear. "Or should we plan on carrying you through this one too?" Several recruits chuckled at the comment, and Maya felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. She'd encountered bullies before, but having her competence questioned in front of the entire class felt particularly humiliating. However, she also recognized that responding emotionally would only reinforce their perception of her as weak. "I'll do my part," Maya replied evenly, adjusting her gear one final time. The agility course consisted of crawling through a tunnel, navigating an obstacle course, and climbing stairs while wearing full equipment. Maya watched as the larger recruits powered through the exercises with relative ease, their natural strength compensating for any technical deficiencies in their approach. When her turn came, Maya took a deep breath and focused on efficiency rather than speed. She'd spent the previous evening researching proper SCBA techniques and studying videos of experienced firefighters moving through similar exercises. While she couldn't match the raw power of her classmates, she could potentially outperform them through superior technique and strategic thinking. The tunnel crawl went better than expected. Maya's smaller size actually worked to her advantage in the confined space, allowing her to move more easily than some of the larger recruits who had to contort their bodies awkwardly. She emerged from the tunnel in the middle of the pack, already feeling more confident about her approach. The obstacle portion proved more challenging, requiring her to climb over walls and navigate through tight spaces while maintaining control of her equipment. Maya found herself falling behind as her shorter reach made some of the obstacles more difficult to navigate. However, she noticed that several of the faster recruits were making technical mistakes that would be dangerous in real emergency situations. It was during the stair climb that Maya began to realize her potential advantage. While the other recruits charged up the stairs using brute force, she paced herself carefully and focused on maintaining proper breathing technique with the SCBA equipment. By the halfway point, several of the stronger recruits were beginning to show signs of fatigue, their breathing becoming labored and their movements less controlled. Maya maintained her steady pace, and by the final flight of stairs, she found herself passing recruits who had started well ahead of her. Her smaller size meant she required less oxygen consumption, and her methodical approach had conserved energy throughout the exercise. When she reached the top of the stairs, she was surprised to find herself in the top third of finishers. Captain Morrison was waiting at the finish line, stopwatch in hand. As Maya approached, he made another note on his clipboard, his expression unreadable. She removed her face mask and tried to control her breathing, not wanting to appear overly winded despite the challenging exercise. "Interesting technique, Rodriguez," Morrison commented. "Not the fastest time, but you finished strong while some of your classmates are still struggling up those stairs." Maya glanced back to see Derek Thompson and two other larger recruits laboring up the final flight, their faces red with exertion and their breathing clearly compromised. The sight filled her with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. She didn't want her fellow recruits to fail, but she felt vindicated that size and strength weren't the only factors determining success. Over the following weeks, a pattern began to emerge. Maya continued to struggle with exercises requiring pure strength, but she consistently outperformed expectations in areas where technique, endurance, and problem-solving skills were important. She became known for her meticulous preparation, often arriving early to practice exercises and staying late to study equipment and procedures. The turning point came during a rope rescue simulation. The exercise required teams to work together to lower and raise a victim from a simulated building collapse. Maya found herself assigned to the same team as Derek Thompson, much to both of their apparent displeasure. "Just try not to drop the rope," Derek muttered as they prepared their equipment. Maya bit back her initial response and instead focused on the technical aspects of the exercise. She'd spent hours studying rope rescue techniques and had practiced knot tying until she could perform the procedures blindfolded. As the team prepared to lower their simulated victim, Maya noticed that Derek was setting up his anchor point incorrectly. "Derek, that anchor won't hold under dynamic load," Maya said quietly, not wanting to embarrass him in front of the other team members. Derek glanced at her setup dismissively. "I've been rock climbing for 10 years. I think I know how to tie a rope." Maya hesitated, torn between avoiding confrontation and ensuring the safety of the exercise. She watched as Derek completed his setup, clearly proud of his work despite the obvious technical flaws. The instructor hadn't noticed the error yet, but Maya knew that once they began the lowering sequence, the improper anchor could fail catastrophically. "Derek, please, just look at the load distribution on that anchor," Maya persisted. In a real scenario, I wouldn't be relying on someone who can barely lift her own body weight," Derek snapped, his voice rising enough to attract attention from nearby teams. The comment stung, but Maya's concern for safety overrode her personal feelings. She quickly moved to Derek's position and began adjusting his anchor system, her hands working with practiced efficiency to redistribute the load properly. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Derek demanded, moving to stop her. At that moment, Captain Morrison appeared beside their team, his experienced eye immediately assessing the situation. He examined both Maya's correction and Derek's original setup, his expression growing increasingly serious. "Thompson, step back," Morrison ordered sharply. "Rodriguez, explain what you've done here." Maya's heart raced as she found herself the center of attention, but she forced herself to speak clearly and confidently. "Sir, the original anchor configuration would create a shock load situation if the victim's weight shifted during lowering. I redistributed the load across multiple anchor points and adjusted the angle to reduce stress on any single component." Morrison examined the setup more closely, testing the anchor points and checking the angles. After what felt like an eternity, he nodded slowly. Textbook correction, Rodriguez. Thompson, your setup would have failed during dynamic loading, potentially resulting in a fatal fall for both the victim and the rescue team. Derek's face flushed red. Whether from embarrassment or anger, Maya couldn't tell. The other team members looked uncomfortable, clearly recognizing that a serious safety issue had been averted, but unsure how to react to the public correction. This is exactly why we drill these procedures, Morrison continued, addressing the entire group that had gathered to watch. Technical knowledge and attention to detail can be just as important as physical strength. Rodriguez potentially saved lives today by speaking up when she identified a safety issue. As the exercise continued, Maya found that her team's dynamics had shifted significantly. While Derek remained sullen and withdrawn, the other team members began asking her technical questions and seeking her input on equipment setup. Word of the incident spread quickly among the recruits, and Maya noticed a subtle change in how some of her classmates interacted with her. However, not everyone was pleased with Maya's growing reputation for technical competence. A small group led by Derek Thompson seemed to resent what they perceived as preferential treatment or grade inflation. They began making pointed comments about how the academy was lowering standards and questioning whether book knowledge could really substitute for practical experience and physical capability. The tension came to a head during a particularly challenging week that included their first live fire exercise. The recruits would be entering a controlled burn building to practice search and rescue techniques under real fire conditions. The exercise represented a major milestone in their training and would be one of the first times they'd face actual danger rather than simulated scenarios. Maya spent extra hours preparing for the exercise, reviewing building layout plans and studying firefighter survival techniques. She knew that her smaller size could actually be advantageous in the confined, smoke-filled environment, but she also understood that her teammates' confidence in her abilities would be crucial for team safety and success. The night before the live fire exercise, Derek Thompson approached Maya in the equipment room where she was checking her gear for the 100th time. His expression was serious, lacking the usual hostility she'd come to expect from him. "Rodriguez, we need to talk," Derek said, glancing around to ensure they were alone. Maya looked up from her air tank inspection, unsure what to expect from this unusual interaction. Derek had barely spoken to her directly since the rope rescue incident, communicating primarily through dismissive gestures and pointed comments to other recruits. "I know we haven't exactly gotten along," Derek continued, his tone uncharacteristically subdued. "But tomorrow is serious business. People can get hurt or killed if teams don't work together properly." Maya waited for him to continue, sensing that there was more he wanted to say. "Look, I still think you're too small for this job," Derek said bluntly. "But I also know you're smart and you prepare better than anyone else in this class. If we're going to be on a team together tomorrow, I need to know that you can handle your part." The conversation felt like a crossroads moment for Maya. She could respond defensively, pointing out all the times she'd proven her competence, or she could take the opportunity to build a working relationship with someone who clearly influenced other recruits' opinions. "I can handle my part," Maya replied simply. "The question is whether you can trust someone who doesn't look like your idea of a firefighter." Derek studied her face for a long moment, as if weighing her words carefully. "I guess we'll find out tomorrow." As Maya finished her equipment check that evening, she reflected on how much had changed since her first day at the academy. She'd proven her technical competence and demonstrated that physical size didn't always determine effectiveness. However, she also understood that the biggest challenges still lay ahead, and tomorrow's live fire exercise would be her most significant test yet. The morning of the live fire exercise dawned gray and cold, with a bitter wind that seemed to cut through even the heaviest gear. Maya arrived at the training facility early, as had become her habit, and spent time reviewing the building layout one final time. She visualized herself moving through the structure, identifying potential hazards, and planning efficient search patterns. As her fellow recruits began arriving, Maya noticed an unusual tension in the air. Even the most confident recruits seemed subdued, the reality of entering a burning building having sobered their usual bravado. Captain Morrison arrived with several other instructors, their expressions serious as they began setting up equipment and conducting final safety checks. "Today you stop being students and start being firefighters," Morrison announced to the assembled group. Everything you've learned over the past several weeks will be put to the test under real fire conditions. You'll work in teams of 4, conducting search and rescue operations while managing live fire suppression. Maya found herself assigned to a team with Derek Thompson, Marcus Williams, and Sarah Chen, one of the other female recruits. The composition felt deliberately chosen by the instructors, bringing together recruits with different strengths and backgrounds. Sarah had emerged as one of the strongest female recruits, with an athletic background and natural leadership abilities. As the teams prepared their equipment, Maya caught Derek watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. The conversation from the previous evening had established a fragile truce between them, but she knew that real trust would only come through shared experience under pressure. The burned building loomed before them, smoke already beginning to pour from upper-floor windows as the instructors set the controlled fires. Maya felt her heart rate increase as she pulled on her gear, the familiar weight of the SCBA tank settling onto her shoulders. This was the moment she'd been preparing for since she'd first decided to pursue firefighting as a career. Captain Morrison approached their team for a final briefing. Your assignment is to search the second floor for victims and conduct primary ventilation to improve visibility and reduce heat buildup. Rodriguez, you'll take point on the search pattern. Thompson, you're on the hose line. Williams, you handle ventilation. Chen, you're backup and team safety officer. Maya felt a surge of pride and anxiety at being given the point position. Leading the search meant being first into the unknown, responsible for navigating the team through the dangerous environment while maintaining awareness of changing fire conditions. As they approached the building entrance, Maya took a deep breath and activated her air supply. The familiar hiss of the breathing apparatus helped calm her nerves, and she mentally reviewed the search procedures she'd practiced countless times. Behind her, she could sense her teammates' tension, but also their readiness to follow her lead. The door opened, and Maya stepped into her first real fire. The heat hit Maya like a physical wall as she crossed the threshold into the burn building. Despite her protective gear, she could feel the intensity radiating through her jacket as smoke swirled around the team in choking clouds. The visibility dropped to nearly zero within seconds, forcing her to rely on her training and instincts to navigate the unfamiliar environment. Maya dropped to her hands and knees, beginning the systematic search pattern she'd practiced hundreds of times in clear conditions. The floor felt solid beneath her gloved hands as she swept from side to side, her team following close behind in a coordinated line. Through her face mask, she could hear the steady rhythm of her own breathing mixed with the crackling of flames somewhere deeper in the building. Rodriguez, how's visibility up there? Derek's voice crackled through the radio, barely audible over the growing roar of the fire. Nearly zero, Maya responded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system, maintaining search pattern, moving toward the back bedrooms. The layout of the building had been drilled into their heads during preparation, but navigating in actual fire conditions proved far more challenging than Maya had anticipated. The smoke played tricks with distance and direction, making familiar landmarks disappear and reappear without warning. She found herself relying heavily on tactile navigation, using walls and furniture to maintain her bearings. As the team reached the first bedroom, Maya encountered their first major obstacle. The doorway was partially blocked by debris from ceiling collapse, creating a narrow opening that would challenge even her small frame. She could hear Derek and Marcus behind her, their breathing becoming more labored as the physical demands of the exercise took their toll. "Obstruction at bedroom 1, Maya reported through the radio, partial collapse blocking entrance. I can fit through, but larger team members may have difficulty." Captain Morrison's voice came through clearly on the radio channel. Rodriguez, assess structural stability before proceeding. Safety takes precedence over speed. Maya carefully examined the debris blocking the doorway, testing the stability of the collapsed ceiling material. Her size, which had been seen as a liability in so many previous exercises, suddenly became a significant advantage. She could navigate through spaces that would be impossible for her larger teammates, potentially reaching victims that others couldn't access. "Debris appears stable," Maya reported after her assessment. "I'm going through to check for victims. Team will maintain position at doorway for safety." Derek's voice came through the radio with obvious concern. "Rodriguez, maybe we should find another way in. That doesn't look safe." For a moment, Maya hesitated. Derek's concern might be genuine, or it might reflect his continued doubt about her judgment under pressure. Either way, she knew that her decision in this moment would influence how her teammates viewed her capabilities for the remainder of their training and potentially their careers.
Negative, Maya responded firmly.
I can navigate safely and we need to clear this room. Proceeding with search. Maya squeezed through the narrow opening, her smaller frame allowing her to pass through without disturbing the unstable debris. On the other side, she found herself in a smoke-filled bedroom with visibility reduced to just a few inches. She immediately began the systematic search pattern, sweeping her arms in wide arcs as she moved across the floor. The heat in the enclosed space was intense, and Maya could feel sweat pooling inside her protective gear despite the regulated airflow from her breathing apparatus. She forced herself to maintain steady, controlled movements, knowing that panic or rushed actions could lead to missing a victim or compromising her own safety. Halfway across the room, Maya's gloved hand encountered something unexpected. Instead of floor or furniture, she felt the unmistakable texture of clothing and what appeared to be a human form. Her heart rate spiked as she carefully examined what she'd found, confirming that it was indeed one of the training mannequins used to simulate unconscious victims.
Victim located in bedroom 1,
Maya announced through the radio, unable to keep the excitement out of her voice. Adult-sized mannequin appears unconscious, preparing for extraction. The mannequin weighed approximately 180 pounds, representing a realistic victim that firefighters might encounter in actual emergency situations. Maya knew immediately that she couldn't physically drag the mannequin through the debris-blocked doorway by herself. However, she also recognized an opportunity to demonstrate that effective firefighting required more than just individual strength. "Thompson, I need you to position yourself at the doorway," Maya called through the radio. "I'm going to pass the victim through the opening, and you'll need to receive on the other side." Maya could hear movement and muffled conversation as her team repositioned themselves according to her instructions. The fact that Derek was following her lead without argument felt like a significant breakthrough in their working relationship, though she remained focused on the immediate challenge. Working in the confined, smoke-filled space, Maya positioned herself to lift the mannequin's upper body while pushing with her legs to maneuver it toward the doorway. The technique she'd studied emphasized using proper body mechanics and leverage rather than relying solely on upper body strength. Her smaller size actually helped in the cramped environment, allowing her to maintain better positioning than a larger person might have managed. "Coming through now," Maya announced as she began feeding the mannequin through the narrow opening. "Derek, grab the shoulders and pull steady." The extraction went smoothly, with Derek and Marcus working together to receive the mannequin, while Sarah Chen maintained safety watch. Maya followed the victim through the opening, feeling a sense of accomplishment as she rejoined her team in the hallway. "Nice work, Rodriguez," Sarah's voice came through clearly. That was textbook victim extraction under difficult conditions. As the team moved to the next room in their search pattern, Maya noticed that the dynamics had shifted subtly. Derek no longer questioned her navigation decisions, and both Marcus and Sarah seemed to defer to her judgment on search techniques. The successful rescue had established her credibility in a way that weeks of classroom instruction had been unable to achieve. The second bedroom proved less challenging to access, but the fire conditions had intensified significantly since they'd entered the building. Maya could feel the heat increasing even through her protective gear, and the smoke had become so thick that her face mask was constantly fogging despite the anti-fog coating. As they searched the second room, Maya began to notice signs of fatigue in her teammates' radio communications. Derek's breathing had become noticeably more labored, and Marcus was moving more slowly than usual. The physical demands of working in full gear under extreme heat conditions were taking their toll on the larger recruits. "How's everyone doing on air supply?" Maya asked through the radio, knowing that monitoring team resources was crucial for safety. "I'm at about 60%, Derek responded, his voice strained. "Same here," Marcus added. "This is a lot harder than the training exercises." Maya checked her own air gauge and was surprised to see that she still had over 70% remaining. Her smaller size and efficient breathing technique were providing a significant advantage in terms of air consumption, extending her operational time in the dangerous environment. "Rodriguez, this is Morrison." Captain Morrison's voice came through the radio. "How's your team status?" "2 victims recovered. Continuing search of floor 2, Maya responded. Team is fatigued but operational. Air supplies at 60 to 70%. Be advised, fire conditions are intensifying on the first floor. Complete your search and prepare for extraction within 10 minutes. The time pressure added urgency to their remaining search, but Maya forced herself to maintain proper technique rather than rushing through the procedures. She'd seen too many training exercises go wrong when teams prioritized speed over safety, and she was determined not to make that mistake during her first live fire experience. As they approached the final room in their search area, Maya encountered another significant obstacle. The doorway was completely blocked by fallen ceiling joists, creating an impassable barrier that couldn't be safely removed without specialized equipment. However, there was a window that could potentially provide access to the room from the exterior. Blocked doorway at bedroom 3, Maya reported. Considering window access from exterior. Thompson, can you establish ventilation while I check the window route? Derek moved to set up ventilation procedures while Maya examined the window access option. The window was on the second floor, requiring either ladder access or rope techniques to reach safely. Maya realized that this decision point would test not just her technical skills, but her judgment about acceptable risk levels. Through the radio, she could hear Captain Morrison coordinating with other teams and monitoring overall building conditions. The exercise was clearly reaching a critical phase, with multiple teams working throughout the structure under increasingly dangerous conditions. Morrison, this is Rodriguez, Maya called through the radio. Requesting permission to attempt window access to complete search of bedroom 3. Doorway blocked by structural collapse. Rodriguez, what's your assessment of window access safety? Maya carefully considered the question, weighing her desire to complete the search against the potential risks to her team. The window appeared stable, and they had rope rescue equipment that could provide safety backup. However, she also recognized that her smaller size might be influencing her perception of the difficulty involved. Sir, I can safely access through window with rope backup. Larger team members should maintain position for safety. There was a pause before Morrison responded. Rodriguez, your team leader for this exercise. It's your call, but remember that getting your team home safely is more important than completing every aspect of the search. The responsibility of the decision weighed heavily on Maya as she considered her options. She could play it safe and report the room as inaccessible, or she could take the calculated risk of window access to ensure a complete search. Her choice would reflect not just her technical judgment, but her understanding of the broader principles that guided firefighting operations. Team, I'm going through the window, Maya announced. Derek, set up rope backup. Sarah, maintain radio contact. Marcus, monitor building conditions for any changes. Maya positioned herself at the window and began setting up her rope system, her movements precise and efficient despite the challenging conditions. Through her face mask, she could see her teammates watching her work, their expressions hidden but their body language suggesting a mixture of concern and confidence in her abilities. As she prepared to exit through the window, Maya reflected on how dramatically her relationship with her team had evolved over the course of the exercise. What had started as skepticism and barely concealed hostility had transformed into genuine cooperation and mutual respect. Derek, in particular, seemed to have moved from viewing her as a liability to recognizing her as a competent team leader. The rope system deployed smoothly, and Maya began her descent to access the blocked bedroom from outside. The exterior of the building provided a stark contrast to the smoke-filled interior, with clear visibility and relatively cool air. However, Maya remained focused on the task at hand, knowing that her team was counting on her to complete the search quickly and safely. The window access worked exactly as planned, allowing Maya to enter the final bedroom and conduct a thorough search. She found no additional victims, but the completion of the search meant that her team could report a comprehensive clearance of their assigned area. As she prepared to rejoin her team through the interior route, Maya felt a deep sense of satisfaction at having successfully led her first live fire exercise. However, as she moved back through the building's interior, Maya began to notice changes in the fire conditions that concerned her. The heat seemed more intense, and the smoke patterns suggested that the fire was spreading more aggressively than anticipated. Through her radio, she could hear increased chatter from other teams and instructors, suggesting that the overall situation was becoming more challenging. Morrison, this is Rodriguez, Maya called through the radio as she navigated back toward her team's position. I'm observing increased heat and smoke intensity on floor 2. Recommend accelerating extraction timeline. Copy that, Rodriguez. All teams, prepare for immediate extraction. Building conditions are deteriorating faster than anticipated. Maya reached her team's position just as the evacuation order came through. Derek, Marcus, and Sarah looked visibly relieved to see her return safely, and she could sense their readiness to exit the building as quickly as possible. However, their extraction route had been complicated by the changing fire conditions, requiring them to navigate through areas that had become significantly more dangerous since their initial entry.
"All right, team," Maya said as they prepared to move out.
"We're taking the south stairwell for extraction. Stay close, maintain contact, and follow my lead. Air supplies should be sufficient, but monitor your gauges and report any issues immediately." As they began their exit movement, Maya found herself thinking about the transformation that had occurred during the exercise. She'd entered the building as a recruit whose competence was questioned by her teammates, and she was leaving as someone who had successfully led a team through challenging conditions while earning their respect and trust. The south stairwell proved to be partially compromised, with increased heat and smoke making navigation more difficult than their initial ascent. Maya maintained her position at the front of the team, guiding them through the hazardous conditions while monitoring their overall status and safety. "Rodriguez, how's your team doing?" Morrison's voice came through the radio as they descended the stairs. "Team is intact and moving steadily," Maya responded. "ETA to ground floor approximately 2 minutes." As they reached the ground floor and moved toward the exit, Maya could see daylight streaming through the doorway ahead. The contrast between the dark, smoke-filled interior and the bright exterior seemed to symbolize their transition from students conducting an exercise to firefighters who had proven themselves under real fire conditions. The team emerged from the building together, and Maya felt the cool outside air against her face mask as they moved to the designated safety area. Around them, other teams were completing their own extractions, some looking more haggard than others, but all appearing to have successfully completed their assigned missions. Captain Morrison approached their team as they began removing their breathing apparatus and conducting post-exercise equipment checks. His expression was serious but not disapproving, suggesting that their performance had met his expectations. "Rodriguez, team report," Morrison requested. "Sir, search of second floor completed successfully," Maya responded formally. 2 victims recovered, no casualties. Team extracted safely with adequate air reserves remaining. Morrison nodded and made notes on his clipboard before addressing the team as a whole. "Overall, good performance under difficult conditions. Rodriguez, your team leadership was solid, particularly your decision-making under pressure and your adaptation to changing conditions." Derek stepped forward, his expression serious but respectful. "Captain, I'd like to add that Rodriguez's technical knowledge and judgment were excellent throughout the exercise. She made the right calls when it mattered." The endorsement from Derek felt particularly meaningful to Maya, given their rocky relationship and his initial skepticism about her abilities. Sarah and Marcus nodded in agreement, their expressions suggesting that the team had truly come together during the challenging exercise. As the teams gathered for the post-exercise debrief, Maya reflected on how much had changed since her first day at the academy. The live fire exercise had proven to herself and to her teammates that size and strength weren't the only factors determining effectiveness as a firefighter. Her technical preparation, decision-making under pressure, and ability to adapt to changing conditions had been just as important as physical capability. However, Maya also understood that the live fire exercise was just one milestone in her training and that greater challenges still lay ahead. The Academy's curriculum would continue to test her in new ways, and she would need to maintain her focus and determination throughout the remaining weeks of instruction. Captain Morrison addressed the entire group as they prepared to return to the main Academy building. Today's exercise demonstrated several important principles about firefighting operations. Technical competence, teamwork, and sound judgment under pressure are just as critical as physical strength and endurance. Some of you discovered strengths you didn't know you had, while others learned about areas where you need improvement. His eyes briefly met Maya's as he continued. "The firefighters who succeed in this profession are those who can adapt their approach to maximize their individual strengths while contributing effectively to team operations. Size, gender, and background are less important than competence, dedication, and the ability to perform under pressure. As the group walked back toward the academy building, Maya found herself walking alongside Derek Thompson. The antagonistic tension that had characterized their early interactions had been replaced by something approaching mutual respect, though she sensed that their relationship was still evolving. "Rodriguez," Derek said quietly as they walked. "I owe you an apology for how I acted during the first few weeks. I had preconceived notions about who could be effective in this job, and I was wrong." Maya considered his words carefully before responding. "We all have preconceptions, Derek. The important thing is being willing to change our minds when the evidence contradicts what we thought we knew." Derek nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about what you said that first day about carrying my weight. I realize now that I was defining weight too narrowly. What you did in that building today, that's carrying your weight and then some." The conversation represented a significant breakthrough in their relationship, but Maya also recognized that building trust and respect was an ongoing process rather than a single moment of revelation. The remaining weeks of training would provide additional opportunities to demonstrate her capabilities and to continue building the relationships that would be crucial for her future career. As they reached the academy building, Maya caught sight of her reflection in the glass doors. She looked like every other recruit, covered in soot, tired from the exercise, but somehow fundamentally changed by the experience. The woman looking back at her appeared more confident, more assured of her place in the firefighting community. The afternoon was spent on equipment maintenance and detailed debriefing of the morning's exercise. Maya found herself answering numerous technical questions from other recruits who were curious about her search techniques and decision-making process during the live fire scenario. The attention felt both gratifying and slightly overwhelming as she was still processing her own experience from the exercise. During the equipment cleaning session, Maya overheard a conversation between two recruits from another team that made her pause in her work. They were discussing how impressive it was that she'd performed so well despite her obvious limitations. The comment bothered her more than outright hostility would have, as it suggested that her success was somehow surprising or unexpected, rather than the result of preparation and competence. Sarah Chen approached Maya as she worked on cleaning her breathing apparatus, her expression suggesting she'd overheard the same conversation. "Some people will never get it," Sarah said quietly. "They'll always see your success as some kind of exception rather than recognizing that you're just good at this job." Maya looked up from her equipment maintenance. "It's frustrating, but I'd rather have them underestimate me than write me off completely." Low expectations can be an advantage if you know how to use them. The wisdom in Maya's response reflected the mental toughness she'd developed over years of proving herself in various situations where her capabilities were initially questioned. She'd learned to channel doubt and skepticism into motivation rather than allowing it to undermine her confidence. As the day concluded and the recruits prepared to leave the academy, Captain Morrison approached Maya for a private conversation. His expression was serious but not disapproving, suggesting that he wanted to provide feedback on her performance and discuss her progress through the program. "Rodriguez, walk with me for a minute," Morrison said, gesturing toward a quieter area of the facility. Maya followed him, uncertain what to expect from the conversation. Morrison had been tough but fair throughout her training, providing constructive criticism when needed while recognizing her strengths and improvements. However, she sensed that this conversation might be more significant than routine feedback. "Today was a turning point for you," Morrison began as they walked. "Not just in terms of technical performance, but in terms of how your classmates and the instructional staff view your potential as a firefighter." Maya listened carefully, knowing that Morrison's assessment would carry significant weight in determining her future opportunities and assignments within the fire department. "You've proven that you can lead effectively under pressure and that your technical knowledge translates into practical competence in dangerous situations," Morrison continued. "However, you're also going to face ongoing challenges related to perceptions about your physical capabilities." The captain's words confirmed what Maya had been thinking throughout her training. While she'd proven herself in many areas, there would always be situations where her size and strength would be scrutinized more closely than those of her larger classmates. "I understand, Captain," Maya responded. "I've been dealing with those perceptions my whole life. The key is demonstrating competence consistently enough that people start to trust your judgment." Morrison nodded approvingly. That's exactly the right attitude. The best firefighters are those who understand their strengths and limitations and develop strategies to maximize their effectiveness within those parameters. As they concluded their conversation and Maya prepared to leave the academy for the day, she reflected on the significance of the live fire exercise and its impact on her training experience. The successful completion of the exercise had established her credibility with her teammates and instructors in a way that classroom performance alone could never achieve. However, Maya also recognized that her journey was far from complete. The live fire exercise was just one component of the comprehensive training program, and she would continue to face new challenges and opportunities to prove herself throughout the remaining weeks of instruction. As she drove home through the Detroit streets, Maya thought about the young girl who had watched firefighters battling blazes in her neighborhood and dreamed of joining their ranks. That dream was steadily becoming reality, but the path had proven more challenging and complex than she'd ever imagined. Each day brought new obstacles to overcome and new relationships to build within the firefighting community. The next phase of training would introduce even more complex scenarios and higher-stakes situations. Maya knew she would need to maintain her focus and determination while continuing to build the trust and respect of her colleagues. The live fire exercise had been a significant milestone, but it was just the beginning of her journey toward becoming the firefighter she aspired to be. The following weeks brought a new intensity to the training program, as the recruits advanced to more complex scenarios that would test not just their individual skills, but their ability to function as cohesive teams under extreme pressure. Maya had earned respect from her classmates through the live fire exercise, but she understood that maintaining that credibility would require consistent performance across all aspects of firefighting operations. The morning of the vehicle extraction exercise dawned cold and overcast, with a bitter wind that cut through even the heaviest training gear. Maya arrived at the academy to find a collection of damaged vehicles arranged in the training yard, each representing different types of rescue scenarios that firefighters commonly encountered. The twisted metal and shattered glass created a sobering reminder of the real-world emergencies they would soon be facing as certified firefighters. Captain Morrison gathered the recruits around a severely damaged sedan that had been compressed by what appeared to be a high-speed collision. The vehicle's roof was partially caved in, the doors were jammed shut, and access to potential victims would require careful coordination of cutting tools and lifting equipment. Vehicle extrication represents one of the most challenging aspects of emergency response, Morrison began, his voice carrying clearly across the training yard despite the wind. Success requires technical expertise with hydraulic tools, strategic thinking about access routes, and precise teamwork to ensure victim safety throughout the extraction process. Maya studied the damaged vehicle carefully, mentally reviewing the extrication procedures she'd studied extensively in preparation for this exercise. The positioning of the damage suggested that traditional door removal might not be feasible, potentially requiring roof removal or dashboard displacement to create adequate access for victim extraction. Today's exercise will test your ability to adapt standard procedures to unique circumstances, Morrison continued. Each team will be assigned a different vehicle with specific damage patterns and victim scenarios. Your performance will be evaluated on technical competence, safety protocols, and efficiency of extraction. The recruits were divided into teams of 6, with Maya finding herself assigned to work with Derek Thompson, Marcus Williams, Sarah Chen, and 2 other recruits she'd had limited interaction with during previous exercises. The team composition felt deliberately chosen to include recruits with different strengths and backgrounds, creating opportunities for both collaboration and leadership development. Their assigned vehicle was a pickup truck that had been involved in what appeared to be a rollover accident. The cab was severely compressed, the doors were completely inaccessible, and the positioning suggested that victims might be trapped in a confined space with limited options for conventional extraction approaches. Maya approached the vehicle methodically, examining the damage patterns and potential access routes while her teammates prepared the hydraulic cutting and spreading tools they would need for the extraction. Her smaller size allowed her to peer into spaces that would be difficult for larger team members to assess, providing valuable information about victim positioning and structural integrity. The cab compression is worse than it initially appeared, Maya reported to her team. Conventional door access is impossible, and the dashboard has been pushed back significantly. We're looking at either roof removal or windshield access as our primary options. Derek positioned himself with the hydraulic cutters, while Marcus and Sarah prepared spreading equipment to create and maintain access openings. The two other team members, Jennifer Walsh and Kevin Martinez, took positions to monitor structural stability and manage tool coordination. Maya found herself naturally assuming the role of tactical coordinator, analyzing the technical challenges and directing tool placement for maximum effectiveness. Her extensive preparation and theoretical knowledge translated into practical leadership as she guided her team through the complex decision-making process required for safe and efficient extraction. "Jennifer, I need you to assess structural integrity around the roof supports," Maya directed. "If we're going to remove the roof, we need to ensure we're not compromising the remaining protection for the victims." As Jennifer conducted her assessment, Maya noticed that their approach was drawing attention from nearby teams and instructors. Captain Morrison had positioned himself where he could observe multiple teams simultaneously, but his attention seemed particularly focused on Maya's team and their methodical approach to the challenging extraction. "Roof supports appear stable enough for partial removal," Jennifer reported. "However, we'll need to maintain support on the driver's side where there's significant structural damage." Maya processed this information quickly, visualizing the extraction sequence and identifying potential complications. The technical complexity of the scenario required not just tool operation skills, but strategic thinking about the order of operations and contingency planning for unexpected difficulties. "Derek, begin relief cuts on the passenger side roof supports," Maya instructed. "Marcus, position spreaders to maintain opening once we begin roof displacement. Sarah, prepare victim stabilization equipment for immediate deployment once we have access." The team moved with coordinated precision, their individual actions supporting a comprehensive extraction strategy that Maya had developed based on her assessment of the vehicle damage and victim positioning. The hydraulic tools operated smoothly under Derek's experienced hands, while Marcus and Sarah positioned their equipment for maximum effectiveness. As the roof removal progressed, Maya noticed that Captain Morrison had moved closer to observe their team's work. His expression remained neutral, but she could sense his attention and evaluation of her leadership performance under pressure. The moment felt significant, as if her handling of this exercise would influence not just her own standing, but perceptions about her potential for leadership roles within the fire department. The roof section came away cleanly, revealing the interior of the cab and confirming Maya's assessment about victim positioning and access requirements. Two training mannequins were positioned in ways that would challenge conventional extraction techniques, requiring careful coordination to avoid further injury during the removal process. "Excellent access," Maya announced to her team. "Victims are positioned as anticipated. Sarah deploys cervical stabilization on victim 1, while Derek and Marcus prepare the backboard for extraction. Jennifer and Kevin maintain tool readiness for any additional spreading requirements." The actual victim extraction proceeded smoothly, with each team member executing their assigned responsibilities while maintaining constant communication about changing conditions and safety considerations. Maya coordinated the overall effort while remaining alert for complications that might require immediate tactical adjustments. As they completed the extraction of both victims within the prescribed time limits, Maya felt a deep sense of satisfaction at having successfully led her team through the complex scenario. More importantly, she could see in her teammates' expressions that they had confidence in her leadership and technical competence under challenging conditions. Captain Morrison approached their team as they conducted post-exercise equipment checks and victim care assessments. His evaluation would provide important feedback about their performance and identify areas for continued improvement during the remaining weeks of training. "Team report," Morrison requested, directing his attention to Maya as the apparent team leader. "Sir, successful extraction of 2 victims within time parameters," Maya responded formally. "Roof removal technique employed due to door access limitations. No complications encountered, all safety protocols maintained throughout operation." Morrison examined their work area and reviewed the condition of their equipment before providing his assessment. Clean execution of a challenging extraction scenario. Leadership was clear and decisive, tool operation was precise, and safety considerations were properly maintained throughout the exercise. The positive evaluation felt particularly meaningful given the complexity of the scenario and the high standards that Morrison maintained for all training exercises. Maya could sense pride from her teammates in their collective performance, and she recognized that their success had been built on individual competence combined with effective coordination. However, as the teams prepared for the next phase of training, Maya overheard a conversation between two instructors that gave her pause. They were discussing the upcoming final evaluation exercise, which would apparently test recruit capabilities in ways that previous exercises had not addressed. The final exercise is designed to identify limitations that might not be apparent through standard training scenarios, one instructor was saying. It's where we separate recruits who can handle the full range of firefighting responsibilities from those who might be better suited for specialized roles. The comment troubled Maya because it suggested that despite her success throughout the training program, there were still assessments ahead that could potentially derail her progress toward becoming a fully certified firefighter. She wondered what aspects of firefighting operations hadn't been adequately tested through their previous exercises. Over the following days, rumors circulated among the recruits about the nature of the final evaluation exercise. Some suggested it would involve extended operations under extreme conditions, while others speculated about scenarios that would test individual physical limitations under pressure. The uncertainty created an atmosphere of anxiety that affected the entire class. Maya continued her pattern of extensive preparation, staying late to practice equipment operations, and reviewing technical manuals for scenarios they hadn't yet encountered in training. However, she also found herself wondering whether there were aspects of firefighting operations that would expose limitations she hadn't yet discovered about herself. The answer came during a briefing session 3 days before the scheduled final evaluation. Captain Morrison stood before the assembled recruits with a serious expression that suggested the upcoming exercise would be significantly more challenging than anything they had previously encountered. Your final evaluation will test your ability to function effectively during extended operations under extreme physical and mental stress. Morrison announced, "You'll work in teams to manage multiple emergency scenarios simultaneously while dealing with equipment failures, communication challenges, and escalating danger levels." Maya listened carefully as Morrison outlined the exercise parameters. Teams would be required to maintain operations for over 6 hours, managing rotating assignments that would test every skill they developed throughout their training. The scenario would include structural firefighting, vehicle extrication, search and rescue operations, and medical emergency response. This exercise is designed to simulate the reality of major emergency incidents, where firefighters must maintain peak performance despite fatigue, stress, and continuously changing conditions. Morrison continued, "Some of you will discover capabilities you didn't know you possessed. Others will encounter limitations that require honest self-assessment about your future role in emergency services." This final exercise would be the ultimate test of whether her training success could translate into real-world effectiveness under the most demanding conditions. Her size and physical limitations would be tested more severely than in any previous scenario. That evening, Maya spent hours researching extended operations procedures and studying strategies for managing fatigue and maintaining performance during prolonged emergency responses. She knew that her smaller size might actually provide advantages in terms of endurance and heat tolerance, but she also recognized that the cumulative physical demands could expose weaknesses that hadn't been apparent during shorter exercises. Derek Thompson approached Maya as she studied in the academy library, his expression suggesting he wanted to discuss the upcoming final evaluation. Their relationship had evolved significantly since the early weeks of training, progressing from mutual antagonism to genuine respect and collaboration. "Rodriguez, I've been thinking about the final exercise," Derek said as he took a seat across from her study table. "I know Morrison made it sound pretty ominous, but I think our team has a good chance of performing well if we play to our individual strengths." Maya looked up from her technical manuals, curious about Derek's perspective on team strategy for the upcoming challenge. His insights might provide valuable input for her own preparation, and she appreciated that he was approaching the exercise as a collaborative effort rather than individual competition. "What are you thinking in terms of role assignments?" Maya asked. Derek considered the question carefully before responding. "I think you should take point on tactical coordination and technical problem solving. Your preparation is always better than anyone else's, and you've proven you can make good decisions under pressure." The suggestion represented a significant shift in Derek's perception of Maya's capabilities and potential contributions to team success. Early in their training, he had questioned whether she could handle any leadership responsibilities, But now he was advocating for her to take the primary coordination role during their most challenging exercise. "I appreciate the confidence," Maya responded. "But the final exercise might test individual physical capabilities more than previous scenarios. Are you sure you want someone my size coordinating operations when the demands get intense?" Derek's expression became serious as he considered her question.
Maya, I've watched you perform throughout this entire training program.
Your size hasn't been a limitation. It's been an advantage that you've learned to use strategically. The final exercise will require smart decision-making more than raw physical power. The conversation helped clarify Maya's thinking about the upcoming challenge and reinforced her confidence in her ability to contribute effectively to team operations. However, she also understood that the final exercise would ultimately be evaluated on an individual basis, with each recruit's performance determining their certification status. The morning of the final evaluation dawned clear and cold, with perfect visibility that would eliminate weather as a complicating factor in the already challenging exercise scenarios. Maya arrived at the academy feeling as prepared as possible, having spent weeks studying procedures and visualizing her performance under various stress conditions. The exercise area had been transformed into a complex simulation zone that included multiple buildings, vehicle accident scenes, and medical emergency stations. The scope and realism of the setup made it clear that the final evaluation would test recruit capabilities more comprehensively than any previous training exercise. Captain Morrison addressed the assembled recruits with unusual solemnity, his words carrying the weight of their approaching transition from students to certified firefighters. "Today's exercise will determine who among you has developed the competence, judgment, and resilience required for professional firefighting operations. The scenarios you'll encounter are based on real emergency incidents, where firefighter performance directly determined life and death outcomes." Maya felt her heart rate increase as Morrison outlined the evaluation criteria and safety protocols that would govern the extended exercise. The complexity and duration of the scenarios would test not just technical skills, but mental toughness and the ability to maintain performance standards despite accumulating fatigue and stress. The first scenario assigned to Maya's team involved a structural fire in a multi-story building with multiple victims requiring rescue from different floors. The incident commander role was assigned to Maya, making her responsible for coordinating all team operations and ensuring effective resource allocation throughout the extended engagement. As her team approached the simulated burning building, Maya quickly assessed the tactical situation and began developing her operational strategy. The scenario included complications such as limited water pressure, equipment malfunctions, and changing wind conditions that would require adaptive problem-solving throughout the engagement. "Derek Marcus, you're taking the third floor for primary search," Maya directed through the radio system. "Sarah and Jennifer establish ventilation operations on the second floor. Kevin and I will coordinate from the command position and provide backup as needed." The operations proceeded smoothly initially, with each team member executing their assigned responsibilities while maintaining communication with the incident command position. However, as the scenario progressed, complications began to emerge that tested Maya's ability to adapt her strategy under pressure. A simulated equipment failure disabled one of the primary water lines, forcing Maya to redirect resources and modify her tactical approach while maintaining effective firefighting operations. The decision-making pressure was intense, as incorrect choices would result in simulated casualties or operational failures that would affect her evaluation scores. "Command, this is Thompson." Derek's voice came through the radio with obvious strain. "We've encountered heavy fire conditions on the third floor, and visibility is near zero. Requesting additional resources for victim extraction." Maya processed the request quickly while monitoring the overall tactical situation and available resources. The complexity of managing multiple concurrent operations while adapting to changing conditions required the kind of strategic thinking and situational awareness that had become her specialties throughout training. "Thompson, maintain position and begin systematic search patterns," Maya responded through the radio. "Chen and Walsh are completing second-floor operations and will be available for backup within 5 minutes. Martinez and I are preparing additional water lines to support your operations." The coordination continued for over an hour, with Maya managing resource allocation and tactical decisions while maintaining awareness of team safety and operational effectiveness. Her smaller size allowed her to move quickly between positions when hands-on coordination was required, while her technical knowledge enabled her to troubleshoot equipment issues and adapt procedures as circumstances changed. As the structural fire scenario concluded, Maya felt confident about her team's performance, but also aware that this was only the first of multiple evaluations they would face throughout the extended exercise. Captain Morrison's assessment would provide important feedback, but she would need to maintain her focus and energy for the remaining challenges. Command performance was excellent, Morrison reported to Maya's team during the brief break between scenarios. Resource allocation was appropriate, safety protocols were maintained, and adaptation to changing conditions was handled effectively. Prepare for vehicle extrication scenario in 15 minutes. The vehicle extrication scenario proved even more challenging than the structural fire, involving multiple vehicles with complex damage patterns and victim entrapment situations that required precise tool operation and strategic problem solving. Maya found herself working directly with hydraulic rescue equipment while coordinating overall extraction efforts. The physical demands of operating heavy rescue tools, while maintaining tactical awareness, pushed Maya to her limits, but she discovered that her extensive preparation and technical knowledge enabled her to work more efficiently than some of her larger classmates. Her movements were precise and economical, conserving energy while maintaining effectiveness. As the day progressed through multiple scenarios, including medical emergencies, hazardous materials incidents, and search and rescue operations, Maya began to notice signs of fatigue in some of her teammates. Derek's performance remained strong, but Marcus and Jennifer were showing decreased efficiency in their tool operations and decision-making processes. Maya's own energy levels remained relatively stable, a benefit of her smaller size and efficient movement patterns that required less energy expenditure than the more physically demanding approaches used by some recruits. However, she also recognized that the cumulative stress of coordination responsibilities was affecting her own mental acuity. The final scenario of the evaluation was announced as a major incident simulation that would require all teams to work together, managing a large-scale emergency with multiple casualties and complex resource coordination requirements. Maya found herself assigned as one of the sector commanders, responsible for coordinating operations across multiple teams while reporting to an overall incident commander. The scope and complexity of the final scenario exceeded anything they had encountered during training. With over 50 simulated victims requiring rescue from various locations, while teams managed structural collapse, hazardous materials exposure, and equipment limitations simultaneously. Maya's sector included responsibility for search and rescue operations in a partially collapsed building where conventional access routes were blocked. As operations commenced, Maya quickly realized that the scenario was designed to test leadership capabilities under the most demanding conditions possible. Her decisions would affect not just her own team's performance, but the coordination and safety of multiple other teams working in adjacent operational areas. Sector 2 Command, this is Rodriguez, Maya announced through the radio system. Beginning systematic search of collapse area with teams Alpha and Bravo. Structural assessment indicates safe access through west side breach proceeding with victim extraction operations. The coordination required for effective search operations in the simulated collapse area pushed Maya's technical knowledge and leadership skills to their absolute limits. She found herself making rapid decisions about resource allocation, safety protocols, and tactical priorities while maintaining awareness of changing conditions throughout the incident scene. However, as operations progressed, Maya encountered a situation that would test not just her technical competence, but her physical capabilities in ways that previous exercises had not addressed. A critical piece of concrete debris was blocking access to a simulated victim in a position that required manual displacement before hydraulic tools could be effectively employed. The debris weighed approximately 400 pounds and was positioned awkwardly in a confined space that limited mechanical advantage for lifting or moving. Maya's team had been working for over 5 hours at that point, and fatigue was clearly affecting their capabilities for handling heavy manual tasks. "We need to move that slab to get access," Derek announced, his voice showing strain from the extended operations. "It's going to take all of us working together." Maya examined the positioning carefully, recognizing that this moment represented the kind of physical challenge that skeptics had always predicted would expose her limitations. The debris was too heavy for conventional lifting techniques, and the confined space made coordinated team lifting extremely difficult. However, as Maya studied the situation, she noticed something that her teammates had missed in their fatigue-influenced assessment. The debris wasn't simply resting on the ground. It was balanced on a fulcrum point that could potentially be exploited using leverage principles rather than brute force lifting.
Wait, Maya called out as her teammates prepared to attempt the direct lifting approach. Look at how that slab is positioned.
We don't need to lift it. We need to rotate it around this support point. Maya pointed to where the concrete debris was balanced on a piece of rebar, creating a natural pivot point that could be used to move the heavy obstruction with significantly less force than direct lifting would require.
Her engineering background and technical approach had identified a solution that physical strength alone couldn't provide. If we position crowbars here and here, Maya continued, indicating specific points along the debris, we can use leverage to rotate the slab away from the victim access point. It'll require coordination, but much less force than trying to lift the entire weight. Derek examined Maya's proposed approach, his expression shifting from skepticism to understanding, as he recognized the mechanical advantage her technique would provide. The other team members gathered around as Maya explained the physics involved and demonstrated how the leverage system would work. "That's brilliant," Sarah commented as she positioned herself with a crowbar according to Maya's instructions. "Why didn't we see that pivot point?" Maya coordinated the leverage operation with the same precision she'd applied to all technical procedures throughout her training. The team worked in coordination, applying force at precisely calculated points while Maya monitored the debris movement and adjusted their technique as needed. The concrete slab moved smoothly away from the victim access point, requiring only a fraction of the force that direct lifting would have demanded. The successful completion of the debris removal operation opened access for victim extraction and allowed the search operations to continue effectively. Captain Morrison had been observing the entire sequence, and Maya could see him making notes on his evaluation clipboard. The moment felt significant not just for the technical problem-solving involved, but for what it demonstrated about different approaches to overcoming physical challenges. "Outstanding problem-solving, Rodriguez," Morrison called out as the operations continued. "That's exactly the kind of adaptive thinking we need in emergency operations." As the major incident simulation concluded and teams began their final equipment checks and debriefing procedures, Maya reflected on the significance of the day's evaluations. She had successfully demonstrated leadership capabilities, technical competence, and the ability to perform effectively during extended operations under extreme stress. More importantly, the debris removal incident had shown that her approach to firefighting challenges could be not just effective but superior to conventional methods that relied primarily on physical strength. Her combination of technical knowledge, strategic thinking, and efficient technique had enabled her to solve a problem that had initially appeared to require capabilities she didn't possess. The final debriefing session included individual performance evaluations with Captain Morrison, providing recruits with detailed feedback about their readiness for certification and future career development. Maya approached her evaluation meeting with confidence, but also with awareness that Morrison's assessment would largely determine her immediate future within the fire department. "Rodriguez, sit down." Morrison gestured to a chair across from his desk in the academy office. His expression was serious but not disapproving, suggesting that her performance had met his expectations, but that he had important feedback to provide. "Today's exercise confirmed what I've observed throughout your training," Morrison began. "You've developed into one of the most technically competent recruits in this class, with leadership capabilities that exceed what we typically see from new firefighters." Maya listened carefully, knowing that Morrison's evaluation would include both positive observations and areas for continued development. His feedback would provide important guidance for her early career and help her understand how her unique combination of strengths and limitations would be viewed within the department. "Your performance during the debris removal incident was particularly noteworthy," Morrison continued. "While other teams were struggling with what appeared to be a strength-based challenge, you identified and implemented a technical solution that was both more effective and safer than conventional approaches." The recognition felt particularly meaningful given Morrison's reputation for tough standards and his initial skepticism about Maya's potential for success in the training program. His acknowledgement that her approach had been superior rather than merely adequate represented a significant validation of her firefighting philosophy. "However," Morrison continued,
You're also going to face ongoing challenges related to perceptions about physical capabilities. Some situations will require direct application of strength and power, and you'll need to continue developing strategies for contributing effectively when those scenarios arise. Morrison's words reflected the ongoing reality that Maya would need to navigate throughout her career. While she had proven her competence and value as a team member, there would always be skeptics who questioned whether her approach could be effective across the full range of firefighting responsibilities. "I understand, Captain," Maya responded. "I've been dealing with those perceptions throughout my training, and I expect they'll continue throughout my career. The important thing is demonstrating consistent competence and finding ways to contribute effectively regardless of the specific challenges involved." Morrison nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the right attitude. The best firefighters are those who understand their strengths and develop strategies to maximize their effectiveness within their physical and technical capabilities." As the evaluation meeting concluded, Morrison provided Maya with her certification status and preliminary assignment information. She had successfully completed all training requirements and would be assigned to Engine Company 15, a busy station that served a diverse area of the city with high emergency call volumes. "Engine 15 is a good assignment for a new firefighter," Morrison explained. "You'll get extensive experience with all types of emergency operations, and the crew there is known for being supportive of new members while maintaining high performance standards." Maya left the academy that day as a certified firefighter, but she also understood that her real education was just beginning. The training program had provided her with fundamental knowledge and skills, but learning to be truly effective in emergency operations would require years of experience and continued development. As she drove through Detroit that evening, Maya thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the small girl watching firefighters battle blazes in her neighborhood to a certified firefighter ready to begin her career protecting others, the path had required overcoming obstacles and changing perceptions that had seemed insurmountable at times. The challenges she had faced during training had prepared her for the ongoing reality of proving herself in a profession where her appearance and size would always prompt initial doubts about her capabilities. However, she had also learned that competence, dedication, and strategic thinking could overcome those doubts and establish her as a valuable team member. Maya Rodriguez was ready to begin her career as a firefighter, armed with the knowledge that strength came in many forms and that the most important battles were often won through intelligence and determination rather than physical power. The girl who had been told she was too small had proven that size was just one factor in determining who could serve and protect their community effectively.